what my book really shows, after 14 years of research is what I put into this thing, is that mammograms are the feeder industry for what I'm calling an unnecessary breast cancer epidemic. In the metabolic world, the new world of where we understand what's fueling the cancer cells, we have a few case studies now of women who have had stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and they have gone on the metabolic treatments and wiped the cancer out of their body. Head of Sloan Kettering was interviewed. Why is Sloan Kettering not doing any studies of how effective a ketogenic diet could be on your cancer patients? He said, are you kidding? He said, drug companies will never pay for a clinical trial that tests a diet. There's no money in it for them. He said that as if it's the drug companies that are running the show. He gave himself away. So the doctors have nothing to do with actually deciding what treatment is going into a patient. It's only about the money.
I'm Nadia Swart, and with me again is Dr. Susan Wadia-Ells. For those who didn't watch our first interview, which was up briefly in June on Business TV, you are an investigative journalist and researcher and author of Busting Breast Cancer, 5 Simple Steps to Keep Breast Cancer Out of Your Body.
Yes.
Your story, how you came to write this. Can you explain what the situation was that made you decide that this is what you're going to research?
I mean, I tend to go into situations and then try and fix them. I think. I mean, I've been very blessed because in most cases it seems like I've been in the right place at the right time with the right plan. And when you can, latch on to those kind of opportunities, it makes sense to do it. And so with me, sadly, I had lost so many women. This is back in 2005. I had lost so many friends to metastatic breast cancer, and they have kept dying on me ever since I even started this book. And even after I finished the book, women who knew what was in the book would call me. In fact, in some cases, we would meet with Dr. Seyfried, who was my mentor throughout, who, if people don't know, wrote in 2012 the treatise called Cancer as a Metabolic Disease, on the origin, management, and prevention of cancer. And he finally told me how and why one woman in this case develops breast cancer and the rest of us never have to. And so once I saw that theory, I understood it. It made sense because I had been looking at all of these epidemiological studies that talked about women who ate lots of peanut butter never seemed to get breast cancer, and women who don't like peanut butter get a lot of breast cancer. So therefore, we would say women eat a lot of peanut butter, but we don't know why. But that's what our epidemiological study just told us. Or don't drink alcohol, Matilda, because our studies showed that women who drink alcohol versus women who don't get more breast cancer. But we don't know why. All these kinds of studies, and I didn't want to do a book on peanut butter studies. I want to be able to tell women how and why one woman develops breast cancer and how and why the rest of us never have to. And so I began to do the research back in maybe 2007, 2008. And again, all I had before Dr. Seyfried's 2012 book came out were the peanut butter studies. I mean, so many of them. It's like and some of them made sense in the end once you understood Dr. Seyfried's theory about how the first cancer cells get started.
If you can explain to me in like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
What is meant by the cancer as metabolic theory as opposed to it being a genetic disease.
Exactly. And the people who follow the genetic disease, cancer's genetic disease, which in the U.S. means the National Cancer Institute, with their billions of dollars of research money that goes out, they, by the way, won't fund a nickel. If you start your proposal, since I believe, or since cancer is a metabolic disease, I want to study X, Y, and Z, they will throw it in the trash can. You have got to say, I swear I believe cancer is a genetic disease, and now I want to study this. Then you get as much money, right? Right. But so in terms of how cancer starts, that's really the question that you're asking, right? Based on the metabolic disease right now, the cancer industry, they don't know how the cancer starts. In terms of the cell biology, they can say, well, we know that smoking will increase your risk for cancer, but they don't know how the smoking affects the cell that then turns cancerous. Okay? They don't know that. Well, if they read Dr. Seyfried's book, they'll know it, but they don't want to read it because they can't practice what he preaches. So the genetic crowd says, for some reason, one of the oncogene in this case breast cancer, in one of your breast cells, in the nucleus of one of your breast cells, that everyone has an oncogene in all of their cells, in the nucleus of their cells, and for some reason it gets turned on, and therefore it starts to duplicate mindlessly. So it just keeps making itself over and over again, which is not really very helpful because if it starts to form a tumor that gets bigger and bigger, and in most cases, if that tumor that's getting bigger and bigger is not shrunk, is not cut out, is not taken away somehow by the body or by a surgeon, then a cell will travel through your lymph system or through your blood, and it might hit your brain, it might hit your bone, it might hit your lung. It will kill you. That's the metastatic cancer. That goes for breast cancer, that goes for lung cancer, liver cancer, etc. Okay, so that's the genetics. So when Matilda goes in to her fancy cancer center in South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, the US, and says, "Doctor, what did I do wrong? How come I got breast cancer and none of my friends have breast cancer that I know of, or, and I don't think my mother had it, aunt, whatever. How come me?" The doctor will go, "Well, Matilda, I'm really sorry. Maybe you were just the unlucky one." Or they have the audacity to just say, "Well, Matilda, I'm really sorry. Maybe it was just your turn." They literally say these things. They don't know. They can't say to Matilda, "Your vitamin D level, blood level was much too low, and so etc." But they can't tell her anything. Whereas Dr. Seyfried in the metabolic theory, what we have now learned, that there's so many MDs and NDs who are turning over a new leaf and saying, forget the genetic theory. I can't treat patients with that anymore. It doesn't work. It hurts them more than it helps them, et cetera, et cetera. So what the metabolic theory says is all the action starts in the mitochondria, in these little tiny energy batteries that are in each of our cells. So let's say that the brain cells have thousands of these mitochondria in their cells, because the brain, thank heavens, needs a lot of energy to operate. At least for most of us, it helps to have a lot of energy to operate. The lung cells need a whole lot too, because they're working hard every day. The breast cells, they don't need that many mitochondria. They have maybe 70 or 80 in each of the cells. But the question is, how do the mitochondria create cancer? And what happens is, if you start to suffocate those energy batteries, and they're pumping oxygen, they're processing, you're bringing oxygen in, they're processing it, and they're creating energy called ATP. They're creating energy to run the show, okay? And in this case, to run your breast, the lining of your breast lobes and ducts where the milk will go through. So even if you haven't had a baby recently, you still have the lobes and the ducts are still there. They still have linings. The linings still need to stay healthy. So it's important not to suffocate those little cells, because once you suffocate the cells in your breast, in this case, the lobes and the ducts, you basically, the suffocating mitochondria send a help signal out to your immune system. It says, help me, please. Help me. I'm suffocating. Please help me destroy myself so I don't go AWire, or help me not suffocate anymore. If your immune system is pretty weak, it doesn't hear when that call goes out. And so that breast cell continues to suffocate. And what can cause it to suffocate? We'll talk about that. That's the 5 simple steps. Basically, 5 simple steps, not just to keep breast cancer out of your body. It's the 5 simple steps to stop your mitochondria from suffocating. That's really what you're doing. You're stopping your mitochondria from suffocating. And so anyway, so these mitochondria, if we can stop them from suffocating, we can stop breast cancer from happening. It's so clear. And people need to know, I don't have a biology background. I mean, I have an undergraduate degree in political science. I have a master's degree in energy economics. I have a PhD in women's autobiographical writing, women's studies. So it's like, why the heck is this woman writing this book? And it's because I'm not brainwashed. I'm not doctors and the cancer centers who were instructing that we don't know Joan, Jane, Tom, soon to be doctors. We don't know why anybody's cancer starts. We know what seems to cause the cancer, the smoking, the asbestos, the being overweight, but we don't really know how. And don't read Dr. Seyfried's book, because that'll tell you why and how. And you'll never want to use chemotherapy. You'll never want to use radiation. You'll never want to you never want to biopsy that thing, because that is, and I have found breast surgeons who deal exclusively with metastatic breast cancer, and they have written clinical studies, and these are all in my book. And here's, I shouldn't be talking about my book. That's the book, right? We're talking about. They said 40%. Some studies say 20, some say 40% of women who undergo early stage breast cancer treatment, stage 0, which is not breast cancer, stage 1, which means a dormant tumor not going anywhere, stage 3, those women who have the quote early stage, it's only in their boob, it hasn't gone anyplace, for 20 to 40% of them will end up with metastatic breast cancer. And there's a theory that's been around for, I think 1899. So is that, it's 100 and, right? Yeah. It's called the seed and soil theory. Now, again, if you go to any medical school, be it Harvard, Yale, whatever, Dartmouth, they're not going to teach you the seed and soil theory. They don't even know about it in most cases, because it doesn't fit with their kind of treatment. But the seed and soil theory says whenever you poke a tumor, a cancerous tumor, if it's tiny, if it's big, it's like, as Dr. Seyfried said, it's like poking a stick in a beehive, because cancer cells apparently in tumors, they're not connected like our healthy cells are. They're buzzing around in that tumor like little bees. You put a stick in them, you put a needle in them to pull out, to find out what kind of cancer you have. That's what the cancer centers do. We have to know you have triple negative, you have HER2, you have estrogen positive. Oh, they have to know that, because then they have a prescription list of how they're going to treat you. So if they can't poke that tumor, they don't know what to do with you. Okay? But once you poke that tumor and you pull that needle out, the seed and soil theory says, watch out. too often you will let loose one of those little freewheeling cancer cells, and there it is outside of the breast flesh. And then what happens apparently is, if your immune system's half decent, here come your immune cells to help fix the wound. They want to heal the wound that the surgeon just made in you by poking you. And one of the cells is called the macrophage, and that's the strongest immune cell in our bodies. That macrophage can heal a broken bone. That macrophage can heal a skin issue. That macrophage can heal a brain problem. That macrophage can go anywhere. And now that macrophage also can fuse with the cancer cell. So now you have a hybrid cell that is a cancer cell with a traveling vehicle called a macrophage. And it can zoom off in your body, and it will lodge. Women will tell you very often it lodges in the bone. Less often it will also lodge in the lung, and less often it will also lodge in the brain. Any of those three has the ability to kill you. So that's why, Dr. Seifert is very, I believe, quite adamant about, because he knows about the seed and soil theory, adamant about don't do a biopsy. As he says, if I ever am diagnosed with cancer, I'll just stop eating. And then for a while, right? And then the question is, well, why would you do that? And once you look at chapter 1 in my book, where I've tried to translate his college level biology textbook, into simple Simon kinds of talk that Susan can understand, and that therefore any woman can understand, any man can understand. Once you realize this, so he also has showed us that first Otto Warburg back in the 30s found out that oxygen cells don't process, cancer cells do not process oxygen. They are duplicating in an oxygen-free zone, okay? They instead love glucose. They love the sugars, the carbohydrates, and they can process that. They use that as fuel to replicate themselves and create that tumor, right? So that's why Dr. Fred says I'd stop eating. I'd stop putting glucose in my body for at least a couple of weeks and quasi-starve. But that doesn't work by itself in some cases it does, but in most cases there's something else going on. And this is where Dr. Seifert really should win a Nobel Prize if they ever become honest. It's because he has figured out that it's not just glucose that is in the gas tank of each cancer cell. It's also an amino acid called glutamine. Now, anyone who has had, first year biology, I had forgotten mine, high school, 1908. But glutamine is the most important, significant amino acid that our body makes and utilizes. The last thing you want to do is take glutamine away from anybody's healthy cells. They'll kill them. It strengthens our immune system. It's everything. So the question is, how do you stop? But glutamine is also feeding your cancer cells if you have any. So there are only two fuels in those gas tank of that, and gas is not one of them, in the fuel tank of your cancer cell, and that's glucose and glutamine. And if you can block those two fuels from a person's cancer cell, the cells die. And once they die, they're dead. And there we are. And now we have stopped the cancer. And now we need to make sure we do the 5 simple steps so we don't suffocate the mitochondria again and start it all over.
Let's start with those steps. What's number 1?
Right. That's physical. That caused you to move from biz news to contours is no mammograms. And why no mammograms? Well, one, any woman who has a mammogram doesn't like to be smashed. I just say, they should start a new procedure to make sure that men don't have testicular cancer. They should smash those. Now that that procedure wouldn't last very long. Anyway, there are much less, barbaric ways. This is 2024. We allegedly, fly airplanes, and we go around the world in airplanes, and we go up into the stratosphere. We have a lot of knowledge that we don't have to keep smashing every woman's boobs to basically tell her she has stage 0, stage 1, stage 2 breast cancer. There are other ways.
What are examples of these other ways?
A thermogram. Now, of course, most in the U.S., most insurance companies won't pay for a thermogram unless you first snatched your breast. The insurance companies and the medical profession are together on this, because what my book really shows, after 14 years of research, is what I put into this thing, is that mammograms are the feeder industry for what I'm calling an unnecessary breast cancer epidemic. Without mammograms, they would have half of the women today undergoing breast cancer treatment. They'd lose half of their clients, because mammograms are the only way you can diagnose that a woman has what they used to call DCIS. Well, first they used to call it atypical cells, and they'd say, Matilda, you're very inflamed. You should lose weight. You should do a lot of stuff to get rid of inflammation. We can see you're inflamed because you got these atypical, or you have calcified. And also, a lot of DCIs calcified cells. Well, if you're in your 60s or 70s or 80s or even in your 50s and you haven't had a baby ever or in a long time, parts of your body are going to calcify. But a mammogram will show that there's calcification. And they call that DCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ. Well, carcinoma means cancer. So now the woman's a little scared. But that wasn't good enough. Now they tell women, oh, you have stage 0 breast cancer. Now, to me, 0 is 0. 0 means nothing. 0 means 0, right? But what they mean is, Matilda, you have different looking cells in your breast lobe or your breast ducts. And so we're concerned, because the studies show 10% of women who have that, they get breast cancer in 10 years. Now, of course, 20% of those same women will probably be dead from a heart attack in 10 years, depending on their age, right? Or they'll tell you, oh, the mammogram showed us that you have a spot there that's half the size of a pea, that's maybe 1/2 of a centimeter. And so we need to poke it. We need to do a biopsy and see what is in there. Now, that if it's that big, the question is, why not just watch and wait and see if it grows? Or why not just stop glucose going in your body for a while and see if it disappears, etc. But those are usually dormant tumors that have been sitting there for a while that will go to your grave with you. But they want to biopsy it because it's there. And the only way they knew it was there is from a mammogram. Because in most cases, some cases thermography, in fact, I just talked to a woman, and a thermogram did show a tiny tumor that's less than 1/2 of a centimeter. So thermograms are getting quite good these days. And a thermogram, for someone who doesn't know, there's no radiation. It's a heat-based operation. So it basically takes a picture of the heat coming out of your breasts. And normal cells are duplicating quite slowly. So I'm making these numbers up. I have no idea. But let's say that a normal would be 99, if our temperature is 99, I guess is normal. So let's just say breast cells are 99 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know if this is, people should not quote me on this, but I'm trying to give a relative kind of thing. And if you have a cancer cell, it's going to be generating more heat because it's duplicating rapidly. If it's an active cancer cell, it's just mindlessly duplicating, okay? And we can talk about why it duplicates like that. That's interesting too. But So it's going to be hotter than your healthy cells. So it's going to show a hotter temperature. And so a thermogram can show that this has or it has a hotter temperature, or it can show that my Hemis Matilda, your left breast is like 110 degrees, but your right breast is normal like the rest of your body and only 99%. So that, and inflammation, we now know, is one of the things that can suffocate the mitochondria and start the cancer. So having a thermogram tells you if you have a lot of inflammation. And if you do, then grab this book and do 5 simple steps to stop the mitochondria from suffocating, right? To stop the inflammation. Inflammation will suffocate anything. Inflammation will suffocate the mitochondria. So those are just one of many reasons why you don't want a mammogram. One single mammogram report can show that doctor, oh my God, Matilda's got stage 0 or she's got stage 1. Let's get her in here fast. Let's poke that area. Let's see what's in there. And then we can tell Matilda how much radiation, how much chemo, how much surgery she's going to need. That's all they know. They don't know that the only thing feeding that cancer cell is glucose and glutamine. But on the other hand, they do know. Because if anyone has had cancer, they know there's something called a PET scan. And a PET, if you have any kind of cancer that looks like it's advanced, they have a PET scan and they say, please don't eat, Matilda, for 12 hours or longer before you come in for your PET scan. And when you go for your PET scan, they I don't know if they give you a shot, they give you a pill, they have you drink something. I've never done this, obviously. I've never done cancer, thank God. But it's radioactive dye. And so it goes through your body because you've just drunk. It's radioactive glucose. So it's radioactive red dyed glucose. Once you've got that red radioactive dye going through your body, they put you under a scanner that will show where there are activity centers. Now, if you've got starving cancer cells, which means you haven't been giving them any glucose for the last 12, 14 hours, they are rabid and they are going to reach out and grab that glucose as it goes by. Your healthy cells are la-di-da, da-da-da-da. We're not hungry. We're not starving. We're fine. But those cancer cells are desperate for glucose, and they're going to grab it. So underneath the scan, if the doctors or technicians see any clumps of red dye, they know, there's active cancer in the liver, there's active cancer in the ankle in the right ankle. There's, hope you don't have any active cancer in the brain, but they can see it all. And then they can tell you, yes, you have stage 4, you have metastatic, in this case, breast cancer, or any, can use it for all cancers, metastatic cancer. And now, now you've got a real problem on your hands. In the big cancer centers, they say, we're sorry, we can't cure your cancer anymore. So we're just going to ask you to buy very expensive drugs that are going to extend your life, one maybe for 12 months, one maybe for 16 months. And you probably have to, mortgage your house. You may have to sell all your stocks. You may have to leave your family poverty stricken just to keep you going for a couple more years. And that's what we will do, palliative care, which means the end of life stuff, right? That's stage 4. But in the metabolic world, the new world of where we understand what's fueling the cancer cells, we have a few case studies now of women who have had stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and they have gone on the metabolic treatments that took away the glucose from those cells, took away the glutamine from those cells, and wiped the cancer out of their body. There are few and far between case studies, but they're there. We have no money is coming from the National Cancer Institute. As I quote, the head of Sloan Kettering was interviewed by the National in America. Sloan Kettering is probably, it's one of the 5 biggest cancer centers in the U.S. It's in New York City, okay? And And this guy, he is no longer head of Sloan Kettering, but he was head of Sloan Kettering then. And National Public Radio, NPR, which is the U.S. sponsored, educational TV and educational radio, et cetera. It's kind of censored these days, but it used to be, we think, uncensored. Anyway, so Dr. Seyfried was interviewed, and this guy, head of Sloan Kettering, was interviewed. And the Sloan Kettering guy, obviously continues to focus on cancer as a genetic disease. We don't know what starts it. And Seyfried is focused on the metabolic. We do know what starts it. And so, meanwhile, this guy said, yes, he had heard about the ketogenic diet, not eating a lot of sugar as a way of losing weight. In fact, he had used it on himself to lose weight, and it worked, etc. And someone said, well, have you heard about it being used in terms of cancer? Yeah, he's heard about it. Well, why is Sloan Kettering not doing any studies of how effective a ketogenic diet could be on your cancer patients, on, stopping the glucose? He said, are you kidding? He said, drug companies will never pay for a clinical trial that tests a diet. There's no money in it for them. He said that as if it's the drug companies that are running the show. He gave himself away. So the doctors have nothing to do with actually deciding what treatment is going into a patient. It's only about the money. And so right now they won't allow any clinical trials between a cancer center treatment thing and a Dr. Seyfried treatment, metabolic treatment. They will not allow a double, two groups, the same age, even sex, whatever, of people. Let's say 50-year-old women who have stage 2 breast cancer and 50-year-old women who have stage 2 breast cancer. And these guys just go to the cancer centers and get the biopsies and the radiation and the da-da-da-da. And these women just get no glucose, no glutamine, all the treatments that will block that. And see how they do. They won't do that study because they know they'll lose. The cancer centers will lose, and then they've lost. They can't pay their mortgage. They can't send their kids to college. It's really, people depend on the cancer centers who work there, and the people come in, and sometimes they can save them, and sometimes they help them live longer, and that's the way it is, even though it's not the best treatment.
It feels like the big pharma irreverence is creeping into the medical field, because as doctors, I'd like to believe, and I do believe, that they do want to do good, that especially with oncologists, they have this sincere drive to find out what's the matter, what cancer is, how to fix it. So for them to sort of just resign themselves to the fact that the centers and, big pharma won't let it happen, it seems a little bit defeatist.
More and more MDs are saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't treat my patients with radiation and I'm increasing their ability to have a heart attack. Women who have had, traditional breast cancer treatment in their left breast have a much higher rate of early death by heart attacks because the heart damage is humongous. And the lung damage, humongous in terms of either radiation of either. And so that, that's not even counted when people die of a heart attack because of their breast cancer treatment. Breast cancer is not even considered the cause.
Nah, not even indirectly attributable.
It's the heart, even though they were kind of young and they used to have a good heart before their breast cancer treatment.
What about the patients who are given a diagnosis of stage 0 or 1? What treatment is the usual for them?
It's the same. If you have stage 3, which it could be a significant size tumor, you have stage 2, which can be a significant size tumor. If you have stage 1, which can be like that, And if you have stage 0, which is 0, you just have some weird cells. The treatments are usually the same. 5, and I am not an expert in any way on treatment, but this is on hearsay and what women who have told me. You'll get more chemotherapy, more radiation, more surgeries, whatever, depending on, they'll say to a woman who has good insurance, even if she just has stage 0, which is not cancer, in one breast, they'll say, you might want to have a mastectomy. You might want to have, you might want us to amputate that breast. And by the way, if you want, we can, for prevention, while we're doing it, we can also take off the other one too. And then we can do reconstruction, a lot of money in reconstruction. And talk to women, there's a lot of pain. And sometimes the pain lives with it for the rest of your life. And then you have implants, and then you're dealing with inflammation and on and on and on.
The only thing that's quite odd to me in this regard is the fact that the double mastectomy is the closest thing to prevention of future cancer that I've heard.
No mammograms for so many reasons. And, people who want to know all the reasons can read that chapter. And as I've said, I think it'd be great if you could ever interview Dr. Gil Welch, who's done decades of amazing epidemiological studies across cultures, as well as within Canada, within the US, within Sweden. I mean, he's done it all, and he keeps showing mammograms don't save lives. Mammograms should be done away with, period, on men. You have self-exams, you have clinical breast exams, you have ultrasound, you have the ability now of having the sonosine, a multiple ultrasound images of the entire breast. There are lots of technologies that can be used that will never show, the DCIS, will never put you through the pain of a mammogram. Don't use any radiation, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, no mammograms. But it's not useless to the industry. The breast cancer depends on mammograms because then they can diagnose thousands more women a year with breast cancer and get to biopsy them. That's $7,000 right there, and get to then give them a prescription of all the treatments they're going to need, and beginning with Genevieve, how about we just do a mastectomy, and then you won't have to work anymore. Women who have been diagnosed with a mutated which means a damaged BRCA1 gene or BRCA2 gene, like
that's a different story.
Somebody, Jolie, the
Angelina.
Yeah.
Yes.
That she became their poster child because her mother had died of ovarian cancer, and had a mutated, damaged BRCA1. I'm not sure if BRCA1 or BRCA2. And when Angelina Jolie was tested, $3,000 test, it showed that she too, had inherited that damaged BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene. But what women need to know is that gene does not cause breast cancer. That gene, if you suffocate your mitochondria and that gene is not damaged, it releases a protein that can help you get rid of that damage, that suffocating cell. And I call them night watchmen. You have 3 night watchmen in each of your breast cells. And you have them in your lung cells too, but we're talking breast cancer. There's the BRCA1 night watchman, there's the BRCA2 night watchman, and then it's P53. That's a really serious, strong, that's much stronger than the other 2 night watchmen. You have a messed up, if you're born with any of them that are mutated, broken. So they're not going to release that helpful protein if that cell starts to suffocate. But if you can start, but you've got the other 2. If you only have one that's mutated, usually people just have one that's mutated. You got the other 2. So it's not like you're without night watchmen. And you also, have an immune system called, and we'll talk about that with vitamin D3, and I call it your internal Wi-Fi. So if you have strong internal Wi-Fi, bing, 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 things happen quickly, right? And in this case, yes, that immune system would come in to protect you quickly if your Wi-Fi were high enough, if your vitamin D blood levels high enough. I have a whole chapter on the BRCA, and it shows that women who are born with a BRCA1 broken gene in Poland, and women who have like 49% of them will today, knowing nothing, will develop breast cancer before they turn 70. That's in Poland, 49% of them. In America and Canada, it's 70% of them. Now, wait a minute. They both have the same broken gene. How come you're better off living in Poland than in the US or Canada if you want to avoid breast cancer? What's the difference here? Okay. But then they found, this is the same wonderful epidemiological study. I talk about it a lot in my chapter on, done by a Polish and Toronto, Canada, Canadian epidemiologist. Then they just looked at all women in Poland, and I think it's like 49 out of 100,000 women. Forget the BRCA gene or no BRCA gene. Just take a bunch of regular women. We don't know what their BRCA status is. 49 out of them, out of 100,000 every year will develop breast cancer in Poland. In the U.S., it's like 149. Again, the U.S. becomes the U.S. and Canada. North America becomes the most dangerous place for a woman to live if she wants to avoid breast cancer. And the question is, well, why is that? And I had fun. This was at the end of my book. I had all of this knowledge, this research knowledge going through my brain. And I, with tongue in cheek, I created and I say it's tongue in cheek. What I created was the Polish women's breast cancer prevention recipe. And you know what some of the things are? Vitamin D3. The Polish people, all Eastern Europeans, they never use high protective sunscreen, SPF. They can't sell it in Eastern Europe because since communism left, people like to show, hey, I'm making more money than you. I can go to the lake for my vacation and look at my tan. You never want to use high SPF and block your tan. Yeah, Eastern Europeans would look at you like you're nuts. Why would I want to use that and block my tan? Meanwhile, their vitamin D3 levels are much higher than the average vitamin D3 level of a North American. And Poland is not a subtropical place. I mean, we're telling you, that's cold, right? So it's a good thing. Canada's pretty cold. So it's a good comparison. And you see that they have higher D3 levels than the Canadians. And why is that? They don't use high SPF, right? And think about food in terms of what are the two most popular vegetables in the United States? Think of McDonald's. What kind of vegetables would you get?
Potato.
French. Yes. Okay. And in the U.S., I don't know about South Africa. Corn on the cob, corn. What are the two most popular vegetables in Poland?
Spinach and kale.
You're close. I think it's cabbage and kale. Again, we're trying to not suffocate the mitochondria. Because once you suffocate the mitochondria, you're on your way to creating a cancer cell.
How did Dr. Secret find a way to starve the cells of glutamine without... Okay.
Well, they're using repurposed anti-parasitic drugs. It's fascinating. They have found things like ivermectin. They have found...
Oh man, never gonna pass the master. Ivermectin, the worst drug. Yes.
Goodness. Yeah. I think what's going on, again, I am not the expert. I am the minus expert in the treatment. I haven't really done any research at all. I'm learning now as I go. I'm having to become more knowledgeable because women are calling me and they're saying, okay, I read your book. I'm not doing a mammogram. I can feel a lump. What the hell do I do? And it's like, okay, here we go, and they want to do a biopsy and I'm telling them no. And what do I do? But what they're finding is if you go on the ketogenic diet, it's called the glucose ketone index, GKI. If you get it down to like 0 or anything 3 down to 0, you are in what I believe this is correct, in what they call therapeutic ketosis, which means your body is now only being fueled by ketones that are made in your liver. And it's not being fueled by the glucose anymore because you don't have enough glucose in your body to fuel anything, okay? And so that means you are effectively starving a lot of your cancer cells. They're screaming, help, help, I'm so hungry, I'm weak, I haven't had any glucose. At that point, if you take a very small amount of these antiparasitic drugs or of an antiparasitic drug, that for some, and I don't know how he figured this out. You have to talk to him. But for that apparently will knock out the glutamine in the weak cells, but you're not giving the patient enough to affect in any significant way the glutamine that's being utilized by the healthy cells. The healthy cells are so strong, they're banging out on ketones, and no way will that little antiparasitic affect their ability to process the glutamine. So the glutamine in the healthy cells are protected, but those cancer cells wipes them out. So it's really, now there's some cancers that don't have a lot of glutamine going into those cells. I think they are slower. In breast cancer, I believe they're the slower growing cancers. So in that case, the ketogenic diet, if you can get it down, that GKI index, get it down to 0 to 3. In some cases, women are probably getting rid of their slow-growing tumors just by using ketogenic lifestyle. Dr. Seifert talks about one, I think it's an antiparasitic called DON, D-O-N, and it's not clear to me. I think it's a very difficult drug to get a hold of. And I don't know if that's happening because they understand how effective it is in terms of blocking the glutamine going into cancer cells. I don't know the reason for this, but he's talking about DON, and it's a abbreviation for some dioxyling down. I don't know. But a lot of naturopathic and MDs who are now using metabolic theory, a lot of them are using a variety of antiparasitics. Once they've got that person's GKI, once the cancer cells are being starved of the glucose, then they take it by mouth, no big deal, and that is apparently able to wipe out those cancer cells. And so there are a couple of case studies and more coming along of stage 4 breast cancer being taken care of. And many, Dr. Seifert's in touch with, I think it's 2 different young men. Pablo Kelly is one. He's in London, I believe. They discovered they had a glioblastoma, which is can be a fast-growing brain tumor. They had heard enough about Dr. Seifert, and they quickly didn't do any conventional. They went strict keto. Some of these guys have been living for 6 to 8 years, and they're having pretty normal lives. In one case, he was able to shrink his tumor enough so he did have it taken out. The guy has some seizures now, but not life-threatening or not. It's not life. And the other is just able to just keep it where it is or dissolve it. But usually in this country, it's 11 months if you are diagnosed with a glioblastoma. And there are different kinds. I think these 2 guys have heavy glucose-feeding glioblastomas. In the What You Eat chapter, it's more about losing your excess body weight. In America, I don't know how it is in South Africa. In America, fully 2/3 of American women are either overweight or morbidly obese. 1/3 are so overweight, they're called what they call morbidly obese. The other third are just overweight. We're talking 15 to 70 pounds. The other guys are 70 to 700. I don't know. And there are very few of us, only 1/3 of us have, they call it body mass index, less than 25, which is a healthy 20 to 25. The reason being overweight is going to suffocate mitochondria is because, and we're talking about breast cancer now, is that every excess fat cell in our bodies are these little machines that are operating 24/7, and they're pumping out a very, very, very weak level of estrogen. It's a very, very weak type of estrogen. And that means that, every woman needs a good amount of estrogen and a good amount of progesterone, the same amount of each, and they need to be balanced. When your progesterone and your estrogen are balanced, life is happy. There's not a problem. Estrogen is your friend, progesterone is your friend. Once you get more estrogen than progesterone, that excess estrogen operates like an acid hitting the mitochondria in your breast cells. Estrogen can only go into your ovary cells, into your breast cells, and into a few other organs. Estrogen can't go into all of your organs, but they can obviously go into your breasts. So when you have more estrogen than progesterone, you're basically hammering at the poor power batteries in your breast cells 24/7.
Which is the case with all but one, as far as I know, contraceptives, birth control pills.
Well, that's another story. Yeah, and we have a whole chapter on why no birth control drugs and why no combination menopausal relief drugs, and why no IUDs that are laced with that. It's called progestin. Nature magazine, which I think worldwide is known as everything was, nothing is anymore. That was a very, very, very reputable, responsible, important scientific publication. They had not one but two articles in the October 2010 issue of Nature. Both of those articles described in detail how this team of 12 scientists, blue ribbon crowd, from Harvard to Vienna to wherever, had finally, after 10 years, discovered with their mice and their rats in their laboratories exactly how the progestin that sits in every birth control drug and sits in most of the IUDs in America. We only have one hormone-free IUD that's allowed in America. They banned all the rest of them. That's another thing in that chapter, because that gets more women to use the birth control drugs, which they make more money on. And it's creating humongous increases. It's been increasing every year of premenopausal women developing all stages of breast cancer. And they've traced it exactly to the progestin. And the sad thing is, one of those researchers, when they started this research, she was at the Harvard School of Health. She's an MD. She might be a PhD too, I don't know. And she is now president and CEO of Dana-Farber Cancer Center in Boston. And neither she nor any of the other 11 researchers have ever publicly done a public announcement that we now understand how and why progestin in birth control drugs and in the combination menopausal drugs causes minimal 20% more tumors to form. And also the progestin not only initiates, it also accelerates.
What is the official purpose? Is there any...
The progestin does one thing, basically. It stops the, I believe it irritates the uterus enough. That's the IUD, irritates the uterus enough to avoid the implantation of the semen, of a seed, So, but with the progestin, it basically does not allow the fetus to connect, the fertilized egg to connect with with the in the uterus. And so that's but real progesterone has 50 different benefits. And what happens is when you go on birth control drugs, you block all of the benefits of your natural progesterone. And I also describe in that chapter how and why the US has now blocked, since 1999, they have blocked the imports of all types of hormone-free, not even the imports, the development stateside, of all hormone-free IUDs, because what they did, hormone-free IUDs have a little bit of copper in them, and that copper is enough of an irritant. So if you have the IUD to stop the implantation of that fertilized egg. Okay, it's brilliant, brilliant. The FDA in 1999, overnight, passed an administrative regulation that said the little copper in that little copper coil is, it's a drug. So that IUD is a drug. I mean, that chapter alone took me a whole summer to research. That I just kept peeling the onion. It's like, what? And what it did was it pushed birth control drug sales like crazy. And what it did was push premenopausal women's breast cancer rates like crazy. So my book is the first to show that since, I don't know, 1990 maybe, I've forgotten the dates, 95, we have had like a 2% increase in premenopausal breast cancer per year. They ask you about 5 questions, apparently, friends have said, when you go into the cancer, the breast cancer section at the Dana-Farber Cancer Center here in Boston. And one of them is, what's your name? What's your address? Do you use birth control drugs? That's one of the 5 questions they ask you. So they're keeping track of the premenopausal women who use birth control drugs who now are coming to Dana-Farber because they've got a diagnosis of breast cancer. And they even have a separate program, Young and Healthy or something, the Young Woman's Breast Cancer Program, and they're charging them $100,000 US to be in that program. And the head of the cancer center wrote the study. One of 12 people wrote the study describing exactly how the progestin, they say it goes into the cell, whatever, and then it somehow accelerates and initiates. They don't talk about mitochondria. 1, they probably didn't understand it back then. But 2, they wouldn't want to do that because then that would say the metabolic theory of cancer. Yeah, it makes sense. So they don't say that. So no hormonal birth control. Detoxification may be more important than anything. They are finding, and I'm not sure they understand this, but when you have unrelenting stress, you've got 5 babies, everybody's starving, your husband beat you or he's disappeared, you are at your wit's end, your cortisol levels are up like this and they stay there 24/7. If you have a ton of money, oh my God, how am I going to look good for X, Y, and Z? How am I going to, I'm so busy. I have to play golf and tennis and I have to have do all of this. And dinner parties, I have to, and I can't spend more than $50,000. Your stress levels are up like this. The very wealthiest women and the very poorest women have more breast cancer than us mediocre types. The stress levels, their cortisol levels are hammering at the mitochondria, suffocating them. And the other thing, I love, Dr. Seifert says, it's not good to over-exercise when you're sick. Don't say to people, I'm so healthy. I just had a mastectomy, or I just had 5 rounds of chemo and I'm fighting my cancer and I did a triathlon last week. No, if you're sick, don't do that. Keep walking, but be nice to yourself. It doesn't help your body if you're stressing it. Detoxing also means stimulating your lymph system. I mean, our blood gets pumped by our heart. Our lymph gets pumped by nothing except us moving. And if you have, especially for women who have large breasts, a lot of women never go out of a bra. If they apparently even sleep with a bra. And so, and some women say, I never touch my breasts, they say. I'm like, what? I mean, it's like the more breast massage. If you've got lucky enough to have a partner do breast massage, do breast massage. Enjoy your life, for God's sakes. You know what I mean? Self-massage. Really, really. And dry skin brushing before you shower. Keep that lymph system moving because it's taking toxins out of your breasts. It's your garbage disposal unit that's built into your breasts. Keep it moving. So many women are not aware of their lymph system. So weight loss, vitamin D3. We've never found a woman who has a breast cancer diagnosis who has a D3 blood level above 60, and it's nanograms per milliliter. Weight loss, D3, detox, no birth control, no mammograms. Those are our